Dear students, today I'll tell you something about flowers. We all know that flower is the most beautiful and colorful part in the plant. So, in your chapter 2 in biology, we have to study about the flower. So, about the flower. So this part is known as your stalk or pedicel we can say. And this part over here, this part is known as thalamus. This one is your thalamus. By the means of stalk, the flower is attached to the shoot of the plant, and thalamus is the part from where the petals and the other flower parts are arised. So now I'll tell you something about the flower in detail. Now we are going to observe the fully open flower, and I'll tell you some different parts of it. Now basically there are four whorls. Whorls are basically rings of the flower. Now I'll take this flower I found in my garden. So I'll just dissect this and I'll tell you few parts of the flower. Now as I told you, there were four whorls. Whorls are basically, we can say, a ring like structure. So I've drawn a rough diagram over here with the help of colored sketch pens. So the first whorl is known as calyx. Inside that there is corolla. Inside that there is androecium and then gynoecium. Now I'll tell you in detail what is this calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Now calyx is the outermost whorl, which is made up of tiny green leaf-like structure we call sepals. Now sepals, what are sepals? Now from your book I'll just tell. Now this part which guards the bud of the flower is sepal. When the flower blooms, it just comes at the side of flower, the green small leaf like structure. I'll just practically show you. Just wait. Now see, as in this bird, it is being protected by this small green thing is there. This is your sepal. It covers the whole bud inside it, and afterwards it opens like this. So its basic work is to protect the baby flower. Now I hope we are clear about the calyx. Calyx is the outermost whorl which has sepals. Now I have shown you sepals. What is sepals? The second whorl is your corolla. It forms the second inner whorl. It is made up of structure called petals. So the corolla, it consists petals. Now what are petals? In this flower we can see this colored thing. These are known as petals. Now I have taken out petals from this. These colored things, these are petals. These are petals of the flower. The work of petal is to attract insects because it is colorful. It has nectar, and it is the main thing from which the insect attracts. An insect only helps in pollination. Now what is pollination? That I'll tell you afterwards. Now first, basically this is petal, this colorful leaf like structures around the flower. In your diagram, this thing is your petal. I'll tell you something about this third whorl, androecium. Androecium is basically the third whorl of the flower. It is the third circle and it consists of stamens. Stamen is male reproductive organ of plant. It has two parts, anther and filament. Now what is anther and what is filament? Now, in your book, this part, this full is known as stamen. This part, this is your stamen. This green part in which this anther it stays is a filament, and anther is this anther only consists pollen grains. Now I'll tell you what is anther and what is your filament. Now in this flower This is your filament, this thing, and this is your anther. I've taken out one stamen for you. Now let's take this. In this is your filament, and this part, this yellowish part, wait, I'll just show you more clearly. This yellowish part, it is your anther. Inside this anther, the powdery substance is there, which is pollen grains. I'll tell you how we can see the pollen grains. I'll just try to take it out, some for you. Now inside this we can see the powdery thing. This is your pollen grains, which is coming from your anther. And this anther and this filament together we call it stamen. Stamen is the male reproductive part of flower. And in this androecium whorl, stamen lies in this. Now I'll talk about gynoecium. Now what is gynoecium? Gynoecium is the fourth whorl and the innermost whorl of the flower. It is the innermost whorl which lies in the innermost of the flower. It consists of female reproductive part, which is known as your carpel, or we can say pistil. Both of the names are for the same thing. Now if we divide this carpel into three parts, see, according to your diagram, this full is your carpel. Now in this carpel, this part is your stigma. Stigma is sticky, that's why the powdery pollen grains, they stick to stigma. Now below stigma there is a tube like structure, we call it style. Now this pollen grains, when it landed on this stigma, it makes pollen tube which passes through the style and go inside the ovary. Now ovary is the swollen part. The swollen part of the female reproductive part is known as ovary. Inside the ovary there are ovules. The ovules are basically the egg of female reproductive part. Now in this, when pollen grain it comes, it makes pollen tube, and when it fuses with this ovary, it fertilizes and it forms fruit. Now I'll tell you what is ovary. Now in this flower, this part is your female reproductive part. This. Now I'll just take out this from here and I'll show you. Before taking it out, I'll just tell you what is this sticky part. The sticky part, it is your stigma. Now this tube like structure, it is your style, and this style, it's come over here, and this is your ovary. Now I've dissected. Now I'll show you where are ovules. Now this part is taken out from this flower. It was like this. Now it is like this. Now if I remove this, now I'll show you. This is ovary and this is ovary and ovules. I've dissected and I'll show you where are ovules. Now in this we can see there are thread like structures is formed over here. Now these are ovules. See, these are ovules. Now it's a clear picture. So these are ovules in which your pollen tube it lands. Now the plant which have both male reproductive organs and female reproductive organs are your bisexual flower, and the flower in which only one reproductive system is there. Like suppose there is only carpel or there is only stamen. it is your unisexual flower. So bisexual and unisexual flowers. Now if the flower is having both the reproductive organs, male and female, is bisexual, and if the flower is having only one reproductive system, that is either it is this your female reproductive system or male reproductive system, it is your unisexual flower. Now we all know the function of flower. The function of flower is to produce seeds and fruit. Now seeds. Now basically this ovule is there. Ovule is there. In this ovule makes seed, and this ovary makes fruit. Now I'll tell you the types of pollination. The pollination, I told you what is pollination, that I'll tell you afterwards. Pollination is basically the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Now this is anther. From anther to the stigma is your pollination. Now pollination are of two types. One is known as self-pollination and one is cross-pollination. Now what is self-pollination? In self-pollination, when the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma, it takes place within a flower. Suppose it takes in this flower, only from this only the pollen grains comes and it goes in the stigma. One is this, and suppose the pollen grain from this flower, it goes to the another flower but of same plant. So this is your self-pollination. But what in the case of cross-pollination? In cross-pollination, the pollen grains transfer from one flower to the another flower and they both take place in the different flowers. Now as the diagram is given in your book, now this is self-pollination, when the pollen grain is transferring from one flower to the same flower, and the pollen grain transfer from one flower to the another flower of the same plant is also a self-pollination. Whereas in cross-pollination, if the pollen grains transfer from one flower to the another flower and it takes place in the different plants, it is your cross-pollination. Okay kids, thank you for watching the video, and if you have any doubt, you can always contact me.